Hello and welcome back to the channel. So the dust has settled and I'm not going to lie, I'm still annoyed about the performance in the game yesterday against Nottingham Forest. But as is always the case whenever I am recording these videos, it's time to do the tactical breakdown and analysis for the way that Liverpool played. So I know obviously the way that Nottingham Forest set up to play against us was designed to counter specific threats that we were posing. So for example, Nottingham Forest started off in more of a 4-4-1-1 kind of shape, and that was designed to sort of frustrate Liverpool, not allow the space for us. But what I want to do in this video is mainly focus on the way that Liverpool played and how we tried to set up against Nottingham Forest. So without any further ado, let's go over to the tactics screen. And from here, we can see the shape that Liverpool lined up in. So I'll be quite honest, in my pre-match predictions, I pretty much got everything wrong apart from the way that Liverpool, the shape that we had during the game. So obviously I thought Endo would start, I thought Darwin would start, and I predicted a 3-0 win. All of those things were absolutely wrong. And instead we went for the exact same team that we had in previous games. And there was no real differences there. However, the shape that we lined up with was very similar to the way we played against Brentford rather than the way that we lined up against Manchester United. So some of the things that I noticed straight away in the first half specifically is that when Liverpool were sort of building up with the ball, I noticed that Trent was coming a lot more inside than normal. So normally what we'd see is Trent sort of operating in these kind of half spaces around here, whereas he was actually coming much further in to make that double pivot with Gravenberch kind of shifting over onto the left-hand side as opposed to sort of staying within the centre. And then that allowed McAllister and Szoboszlai to push further forward and create this almost double box shape with Virgil, Konate, Gravenberch, Trent, McAllister, Szoboszlai. And this is the way that Liverpool kind of set up. And then what we done was utilised Andy Robertson to run along here, and he was mainly operating sort of along this channel going on the inside rather than the outside, and allowing Diaz to provide the width of the team basically. So there was no real changes from a Liverpool point of view. The more interesting thing came in the second half, but I'll go over that in a second. So the way that Liverpool kind of lined up with this kind of shape, it's nothing that we haven't seen before. But what it meant was that Nottingham Forest would set up like so. So they would have their back four like this. And then because they had more of a 4-4-1-1 kind of shape, it meant that they could really sort of pack in the centre of the pitch and leave no space for Liverpool, because they would utilise that one to sort of drop back. So if we go like this, we'll put number 9 up front, why not? So knowing that Trent was going to come into the middle, what they done then was they brought this player over into the centre, and then that created this overload in the middle. So McAllister, for example, was always marked here, Szoboszlai was always marked here, Trent was always marked here, and then Gravenberch was picked up here, leaving this player here to basically cut out any threat from Robertson. And what they done is basically they allowed no space for Liverpool, always keeping players sort of quite close together, quite compact, and that didn't allow Liverpool to basically string up any rhythm together. And it meant that we was always struggling to find that space. And you know, the way Liverpool play, we always sort of utilise that extra pass. But the way that Forest were playing, that extra pass wasn't always on or wasn't always available. And that caused a lot of problems for us, meaning that it was very sort of staggered in the way we were playing. And if we were able to sort of break through the lines, Forest would then commit a foul, and then that would end up stopping the play. And it was very, very stop-start. And this isn't me criticising Nottingham Forest. I think that they went there with a set game plan, and they played that very, very well, and it basically nullified any threat that we had, because it meant that we was always closely marked. I think Aina and I think Moreno done fantastic jobs of stopping any kind of play from Diaz and Salah. I mentioned in the video yesterday that we saw a lot of attempts from these guys to sort of get forward and push down the wing, but instead of us being able to actually do that, they were stopping any opportunity of us breaking down there. Obviously, there was a number of occasions. So, for example, when Diaz, he went on his run, where he won the ball off Yates down down by the goal line, cut back inside, took that extra touch, and then fired it near post, which hit the post. And then there was the opportunity with Jota where the outside of the boot cross from McAllister, and I think it hit off Jota's, it was either like his knee or his shin. But other than that, the way that Forest really condensed the space, packed us in, and stopped us from being able to sort of create any kind of space through our passing, really sort of affected the way that we played. And it became more and more frustrating as the first half wore on. And I think that that's exactly what Forest wanted to do. They wanted that first 45 minutes to basically not allow Liverpool to play any football. So this was the part that I found most interesting. After Liverpool went a goal down, we then opted to take off Konate, and Liverpool went to this kind of shape when we were trying to hunt back and get the goal back. So taking off Konate and leaving on Bradley and Tsimikas obviously still allowed us to utilise those as more attacking fullbacks. And then basically just leave Virgil at the back. Obviously, when you're chasing a game, it doesn't necessarily matter about keeping players back because you're already losing. But I thought that the utilising Trent as the centre midfielder was the part that I found most interesting. Obviously, with the different options that we did have on the bench, we could have easily brought Jones on for Trent and kept McAllister on. But I know that McAllister was a doubt for the game based on the fact he did get injured in international duty. And that could have been one of the reasons why we decided to use Trent as that centre midfield role. But again, there's nothing really to go in deep about the way that Liverpool lined up. It was very much exactly the same as how we played against Brentford. So if we imagine for a second that Trent is Konate, this kind of shape is something that we've seen before. And I think that this kind of shape is the one that we will see most often this season. I think the way we played against Man United, where we had the two in the 6 role with McAllister and Gravenberch, I think that will be utilised in certain games. Possibly it'll be more of, say, an away tactic than a home tactic. But at the same time, there was nothing unusual and nothing different about the way that Liverpool played. The main issue that we had for me kept on being with the passing, especially when it came to sort of the final third, looking for that final ball, so on and so forth. What we noticed a number of times is that, if, say, for example, Salah had the ball here and then Szoboszlai was coming in to win, running onto it here, the ball would either go too far forward and then he would miss it, or the ball would go around here and then he would be caught flat-footed and not go chasing after the ball, which would then result in us losing possession. And I think that was the main problem that we had. Going back to what I was saying previously about the way that Forest looked to nullify any attack that we had, they looked to, basically keep us penned in. They not a lot of space in there. They were committing, tactical fouls, but they were good fouls, on and around the halfway line, designed to stop us from being able to really build any rhythm and any momentum. But I think, you can't always blame every single team for doing that. This is not going to be the only time we're going to play a game this season whereby teams are looking to stop us playing the way that we want to play. So therefore, for me, I think that Forest, they just basically played the game well, and they decide, the way they played the game really stopped us from being able to play our game. So firstly, well done to Nottingham Forest, but secondly, the biggest issue for me was just our passing. I think our passing was so sloppy throughout the whole game. It really stopped us from being able to do anything. I think that the way that we changed to the back three, it was more designed to chase the game as opposed to be like, okay, well, this is the formation that we're going to see at any point this season. But that does make it kind of interesting if Liverpool are chasing the game, that we're not afraid to go for an orthodox back three, but still utilise the two wider defenders to get them to sort of push up really high, and sort of pack that team in and leave basically just Virgil and Alisson as our defenders, then pushing, it'll be McAllister and Szoboszlai or Jones and Szoboszlai or whoever it's going to be, pushing those higher up to create this almost 3-2-4-1 formation, or a 1-4-2-3, depending on which way around you look at it. So I did find that quite interesting, but I found the rest of the game, I think that if we'd have gone 1-0 up, so if, for example, Diaz's shot didn't hit the post and it actually went in, it would have allowed the game to open up a bit more for us from that point. I think the biggest issue we had was that the longer and longer it stayed at 0-0, the more and more frustrated we got, and the more and more Nottingham Forest knew that we were basically playing into their hands, and they were able to just keep it going, keep on attacking us, keep on frustrating us, and keep on playing the way that they were, and it would frustrate us more and more and more. So I think that for me was the biggest thing and the biggest source of frustration in the game. So yeah, going back to what I was saying yesterday, I thought that we were, again, we were the makers of our own downfall in this game. I think that the problems that we had were caused by ourselves. I think that, our passing was sloppy. And that was, at all parts of the pitch. So, firstly, I would give Nottingham Forest credit for when it was inside the centre of the pitch. I think when it was in the middle, they condensed the space and they stopped us from being able to play that we wanted to. And it meant basically that we were forced to either play the ball backwards, where I noticed that Forest wasn't really pressuring our defenders. There was a lot of times where Van Dijk, for example, had the ball and Forest didn't do anything. They let him just keep it. They let him put his foot on the ball. They let him do whatever he wanted. And then whenever it came into midfield, it wasn't so much that they were busting a gut to counter press and to do all of this, that and the other. Instead, it was more a case of they were trying to just condense the space and make sure that we wasn't able to string those passes together that we've seen from Liverpool in various other games. And it works really well for them. The other thing that I thought was really, really impressive was the way that Forest were prepared to throw their bodies on the line. For example, there was a Szoboszlai shot that was blocked by Murillo. There was various other shots. I think Jota had a long-range shot, which one of their players threw their body in front of it. They were really sort of, whilst the midfielders were being very compact, they were helping the defence. They weren't afraid to drop back. The defence were also doing their part by making sure that Liverpool didn't have an easy opportunity on goal. There was always going to put a body in front of it, and there was always going to make it super, extremely difficult for us. And then likewise, their two fullbacks for me, I think you could pick either one of those to be man of the match, because they basically stopped any kind of threat that Liverpool had, whether it was from Mohamed Salah, who was constantly marked out of the game by by Moreno, or it was Aina, who was completely keeping Diaz quiet. So yeah, I think that whilst we were sort of the makers of our own downfall, I think that a lot of credit has to be given to Nottingham Forest. But I think that this is something now that Slot's going to need to work on. Obviously, we know that Forest are a team that, a lot of us are probably predicting that Forest are going to be near or around the bottom of the league. And therefore, if we are going to be playing against teams like that in the future, they're going to look to stop Liverpool from being able to play our natural game. And then that will end up meaning that we'll have to play this style of game more and more and more and more and more. And for me, Liverpool need to make sure that we can overcome this, and there's a way that we can play football. I saw Slot's post-game interview, and he said that it was basically a case of being better with possession, better with the ball. Our passing needed to be sharper, and I completely agree with that. I've said before that I think that one of our biggest problems was our passing. Our passing was at times poor and at other times shocking. It wasn't very good, and we basically played really into their hands. And they were able to frustrate us, and we allowed that to happen. So for me, it's a lot of things that Slot needs to learn from this when setting up against teams that you expect to be down the bottom. But at the same time, the players need to take this on their shoulders, and they need to learn from this. I saw on Match of the Day, they were basically saying that because players were on international duty, that could have an effect, which, if that is true, and I'm not here to say it's not, I don't think it's a good enough reason or excuse for that to happen, especially when you're a professional footballer. But then, if that's the case, how is that going to help us when, for example, we have Milan during the week, and then we have another game on the weekend, and then another game during the week? When you have all of these games coming thick and fast, does that mean that, Liverpool are going to play one off game, one good game, one off game, one good game? That can't happen. I think that whilst I'm not prepared to suddenly go into a great deal of bashing or calling people out, I think this is going to be a problem that's going to come back to bite us in the future in terms of our squad depth and squad rotation. So, for example, if I just take us back over to the tactics screen, when you look at the shape that Liverpool have on here, so for example, if we were to put out our let's just go with our best 11. So when you consider, for example, that this would be our strongest team, we then look at the depth that we have on the bench, and we have to ask ourselves the question of, is it good enough? And unfortunately, in my opinion, the answer is no. Whilst I will admit that I am someone who thinks that Darwin will eventually come good, I don't think that he's shown anything so far this season in the times that he's come on to suggest that that's actually going to be the case. I don't think that Endo is adequate backup for Gravenberch. And I'll be honest with you, I think that the jury is out on Curtis Jones. I think he did have a good preseason, but at the same time, there's been a lot of games that I've seen him play in the Premier League where he either just disappears or he doesn't really do anything to sort of make me think that he could be a player that could ever establish himself as a first team footballer for Liverpool. And I think that's part of the problem. So, for example, if you was to take out Curtis Jones and you was to take out Tsimikas, because I don't think that Tsimikas, I don't think he really adds anything over than just being an okay backup player. And then if you take out Endo and then you take out Darwin and then you look at the rest of the team and then you ask yourself, are these players really good enough for Liverpool to help us go through, an overloaded and congested fixture schedule? Without us taking any real sort of downside in quality if we do decide to rotate players. I think it's quite obvious that if you took Curtis Jones in and took out McAllister, there's an obvious downgrade there in quality. The same if we took out Gravenberch and we put in Endo, there is also an obvious downgrade there in quality. And it looks at the moment, unfortunately, I do still think Darwin will come good eventually. But at the moment, there's an obvious downgrade in quality when we're taking out Darwin and bringing on Jota. Other players that I do think that need to step up a lot more is Gakpo. I don't think that he's done anything really to suggest to me that he deserves to be a starting player for Liverpool at the moment. And I think that's probably the reason why he's not starting. I think Diaz has looked a lot better, although I don't think Diaz had a great game yesterday. When Gakpo came on, largely he done absolutely nothing. And also, I think if we brought on Tsimikas, although I do think Tsimikas is an okay player, I don't think he's a terrible left-back by any stretch of the imagination. I think if we were to bring him on, we'd notice a downgrade in quality in that part as well. And I think that this might be an issue for Liverpool this season. I think if we get to January and we decide to not strengthen anymore, then it's going to come back to haunt us in the future. I think with the congested fixture list, I think looking at these players that we can bring on instead, there's an obvious downgrade in quality in many, many areas by doing it. And I think that squad depth is going to hurt us now. I think that whilst the game, if we'd have won this game, obviously the picture would have looked a lot differently. If players like, for example, Curtis Jones would have come on and made an impact. But the problem is that when we're losing the game and we're chasing it and our option is to bring on Curtis Jones, it makes me question whether or not we do have the quality off the bench. And unfortunately, the answer is no. Obviously, we haven't seen Chiesa play yet, so he may have made a difference. But I think that this does need to be addressed, especially in January, where we need to look to bring in real quality in those areas. A good backup for McAllister, a good backup for Gravenberch. For me, are two positions that we really need. I think Elliott is a more than adequate backup for Szoboszlai, and I also think Szoboszlai needs to. I don't want to see another game like we did against Forest in the future from Szoboszlai. I thought he was actually really poor. But yeah, also good backup for Robertson, I think is also needed, or even someone who can push Robertson for a starting place. I think that, we've said it time and time again that we do need a number 6, a left back, and we've also mentioned about a centre back as well, and that's because I don't think that Gomez or Kwanzaa, to be perfectly honest, are adequate backups for Virgil. But I do think we'll see more of Kwanzaa going forward. I think Gomez's time at Liverpool, unfortunately, is limited. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the game yesterday. Obviously, not much of a deep dive in the way that Liverpool played, because I think that we've seen the way that Liverpool play normally. But what I do think will be interesting is the reaction to this against Milan. I think it'll be interesting to see what team gets picked by Slot, whether or not he goes with a full strength team or whether he does decide to make some changes in there to try and keep things fresh, but also what that then means for the Premier League game that's going to come up after that as well. And I think it'll be interesting to see, what Liverpool do now going forward to really sort of boost the way that they can play against teams that are going to set up in a low block, that are going to stop Liverpool from playing football, that are going to look to, really sort of cancel Liverpool out with the way that they're playing, make the game very scrappy, make it very start-stop, frustrate us. And it'll be interesting to see if Liverpool can overcome that, if there's going to be a change in tactic, a change in shape, a change in the way that we play, or whether it's just going to be a case of, okay, we just need to pass the ball more and get more players coming in there to sort of create that extra body and that overload to help get us out of those situations. But anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel to let me I'll try that again. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like. If you enjoy this kind of content and you want to see more of it going forward, please consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the little bell icon to be notified when I next upload. And let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. Obviously, we've had a day now for the dust to settle and for us to actually sort of reflect back on the performance. Where do you think it went wrong for Liverpool? What do you think we done wrong? Was it just a case of, we were the makers of our own downfall with our bad passing? Or did Nottingham Forest tactically outclass us, which is something that I hate the way that nowadays it's that because we lost the game against Nottingham Forest, I'll say that it was a masterclass by Nuno Espirito Santos. But let me know in the comments your thoughts, and let me know what you think as well about the squad depth issue. Do you think we have enough cover to get us through until the end of the season or even until January? Or do you think that we need reinforcements bringing in? So I hope you enjoyed the video. I will catch you all next time. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Goodbye.